Hello everyone, welcome to the Sankaranti special video from Kulture Katha. As we all know, Sankaranti marks the movement of the sun across the constellations in the sky. But what makes Makara Sankaranti special is that it marks that time of the year when the tilt in the Earth's axis makes the sun appear in the sky in the northern direction, the phenomenon we know as Uttarayan. Uttarayan marks the beginning of the brighter and warmer phase of the year for people like us in the northern hemisphere. And for the farmers of peninsular India, it's the time for harvest and to offer thanksgiving to the sun god who made it all possible. In this video, we're going to look at 8 fascinating aspects of sun worship in India, how it came to be and how it evolved with time.
Mahapapaharam devam tam suryam pranamamyaham.
But before we start, I'd like to thank my good friend Lakshmi Vaidyalingam who helped me with the research required for this video. I'm also indebted to another dear friend and vocalist, Aruna Suresh, whom you already know from the Andal Pasuram she rendered for us. In this video, Aruna has beautifully rendered the Surya Ashtakam, a composition that hails the sun and offers homage to it. So thank you Aruna and Lakshmi. This video would not have been possible without you both.
Adideva namastubhyam prasida mama bhaskara divakara namastubhyam prabhakara namostute.
The sun is often referred to as the only god who is visible to man. It's no wonder then that sun was worshipped as a god across world cultures. Some examples are the Greek god Helios, the Egyptian god Ra, and the Persian sun god Mitra. Clearly, the ancient man had understood the importance of the sun in our lives. Ancient indigenous tribes of India, such as the Gonds, the Santals, Ballas and Thodas for example, have a long and continuing tradition of sun worship. Some historians suggest that the Indus Valley people too may have worshipped the sun god. According to these scholars, certain seals belonging to the Indus Valley time that show wheels with 36 spokes may have represented the sun, with the spokes marking the division of the day into parts based on its movement across the sky.
Saptashvaratamaroodam prachandam kashyapatmajam shvetapadmadaram devam tam suryam pranamamyaham.
The early Vedic man believed in nature worship. So the sun appears among the most prominent deities in the Vedas. Surya, the sun god, was worshipped at different times of the day. The early morning sun was given utmost importance for its wisdom granting aspect and was referred to as Surya or Savitar. Savitar is the deity which is invoked in the famous Gayatri mantra, which asks the sun to bestow intellectual brilliance on the seeker. The famous Agnihotra ritual was also a homage to the rising and setting sun. Apart from the stimulative aspect of the sun, his regenerative aspect, healing aspect, the sun's procreative attribute, his ability to dispel darkness, and his role as the maker of the day, time and seasons were all cherished and worshipped by the ancient Vedic man.
Lohitam ratamaroodam sarvalokapitamaham mahapapaharam devam tam suryam pranamamyaham.
The first mention of the Sauras, the sect that worship the sun god, is found in the great Indian epic, the Mahabharata. According to the epic, the Pandava camp included 1008 sun worshippers called the Sauras. Historians believe that the Sauras probably existed even as early as 3 centuries before Christ. This was also roughly the time when Iranian priests called the Magas are believed to have entered India bringing along their own tradition of sun worship. Historians claim that the Saura tradition and the Magha tradition eventually merged into each other during the Puranic times.
Traigunyascha mahashuram Brahma Vishnu Maheshwaram Mahapapaharam Devam Tam Suryam Pranamamyaham.
In a number of ways, the sun symbolizes the king. As a giver of life, he lords over all beings. He can be both kind and cruel, just like a king. More importantly, he is the epitome of justice, shining equally over the rich and the poor, the strong and the weak, the man and the woman. As a stimulator of the intellect, the sun represents wisdom. In Jyotisha Shastra, the sun represents the father figure. Indeed, a good king, like the sun, is the father to all. All these attributes led the sun to become the ultimate symbol of sovereignty across world cultures. Several kings of the world claimed descent from the sun. In India too, several kings, including the lineage of Rama, were called the Suryavanshis.
Brahmitam teja punjam cha Vayumakashameva cha Prabhum cha sarvalokanam Tam Suryam Pranamamyaham.
During the medieval period, in India, many temples were built for the sun god. Some of the prominent ones include the famous Konark Sun Temple in the state of Odisha in the east, which was built in the form of a chariot drawn by the sun. On the exact opposite end, in the western state of Gujarat, is the Sun Temple of Modhera, built by the Solanki rulers of Gujarat. In the northern state of Kashmir is located the ancient Sun Temple of Martand, which of course lies in ruins today. While these temples are no longer places of active worship, the Sun Temple in the south at Kumbakonam in the state of Tamil Nadu continues to be in use and draws thousands of devotees to it every year. Archaeologists and historians tell us that there was yet another ancient temple at Multan, which is in today's Pakistan, and this temple, according to some scholars, was the seat of the Surya Tantra cult. However, the temple was completely destroyed during the Islamic invasions. Although today the site of the temple is in complete ruins, we get an idea of its past splendor and glory based on the travelogues left behind by the Italian traveler Al-Biruni and the Chinese traveler Huansang.
Banduka pushpa sanghasam Harakundala bhushitam Ekachakradharam devam Tam suryam pranamamyaham.
So what happened to sun worship in India after the medieval times? The temples for the sun, of course, fell into disuse as the sect of sun worshippers was absorbed into the Vaishnava sect. To explain this, I have to remind you of a story from the Dashavatara. You may all know the story of the Asura king Mahabali, from whom Vishnu demanded 3 paces of land as a sacrificial offering. In that story, Vishnu enters the sacrificial site, the yajna, in the form of a dwarf or vamana, and eventually starts to grow enormously to become a giant. He measures his first pace of land and covers the entire earth. He then keeps his second step high up in the heavens, and finally his third step by keeping his foot on Mahabali's head, thus pushing him into the underground. For taking these 3 steps, Vishnu is called Trivikrama. Scholars and mythologists suggest that this idea of Trivikrama was originally associated with the 3 strides that the sun takes during the day across the sky. At daybreak, it's seen at the horizon, at midday, high up in the sky, and at the end of the day, it is seen sinking below the horizon before disappearing completely. Over time, with the rising popularity of the Vaishnava sect, the same myth came to be associated with Vishnu. In the Vamana Avatara story, Vishnu is born as the son of Aditi, the mother of all the Devas, including Surya. So just like Surya, Vishnu too is an Aditya, the son of Aditi.
Tam Suryam Lokakartaram Mahateja Pradipanam Mahapapaharam Devam Tam Suryam Pranamamyaham.
Several researchers and historians suggest that the sun worship came to India in different forms from Central Asia, from places such as Iran and Scythia over 2000 years back. One of the key evidences for the story lies in the iconography of the deity, as seen in ancient and medieval structures. In the relief structures of the Konark temple, for instance, we find the sun god wearing long boots. Now, this is not common. We don't see any other deity in the Hindu pantheon wearing boots. And in some images, the sun god is also shown wearing Greek styled robes. But the iconography of the sun god evolved through the years. In the later period, as we saw, the worship of the sun god largely merged with the Vaishnava sect. Today, the deity called Surya Narayana is shown holding a conch, a lotus, and a chakra, all of which are also associated with Vishnu.
Tam Suryam Jagatam Natham Jnana Vijnana Mokshatam Mahapapaharam Devam Tam Suryam Pranamamyaham Mahapapaharam Devam Tam Suryam Pranamamyaham.
Although today the sun god is remembered only on special occasions, we continue to see the reminders of the sun worship of the past in some common signs and symbols that we use every day. One of them is the swastika. The swastika is a symbol that occurs commonly across world cultures. And historians and symbologists suggest that the swastika is actually an ancient symbol that represented the sun, and its hands represent the sun's rays. In Hinduism, the right facing swastika represents the sun, once represented the sun. Today, of course, it represents auspiciousness and prosperity. Yet another common solar symbol is the chakra, the wheel. The chakra, as we have already seen, is held by both Surya and Vishnu. Chakra represents continuous and repeated movement, and thus the cosmic order. The chakra is therefore an ideal symbol to represent the sun, whom we see in the sky day after day without fail. All life forms are born and thrive on this earth only thanks to the eternal sun. So we bow down to him and thank him.
Mahapapaharam Devam Tam Suryam Pranamamyaham.